Greetings, everybody. Eli the Restorer is back with you, but I want to talk to you today about consciousness and how we perceive the reality that we live in. One of my rabbi's favorite quotes that has always stuck with me is, it's not so much what you're looking at, it's where you're looking from, what's your perspective, what's your belief system, etc., etc. And that's why you can have so many people having a very similar, if not an exact experience, and they're all talking about it differently. And I know it drives some people nuts, because what do you mean? You don't see it this way, you don't see it that way. Well, when your consciousness is stuck in 3D, which I call polarity consciousness, good, bad, right, or wrong, you're going to point out all the things that are right or wrong with this situation. Whereas when we see unity consciousness and how everything's interconnected, you get a different view of what you're experiencing in that moment or that day. Recently, I've been taking a class called Practical Metaphysics, and I love that title, Practical Metaphysics. We used a book by Eric Butterworth, who's big in the Unity Church Network, quite the sage, somewhat Christian, but very practical stuff. And we were talking about consciousness in the class, and one lady got on to talking about lottery winners. And she said that within 5 years, 70% of lottery winners end up where they started. And I took pause with that. I thought, wow, that's interesting. How does that happen? Well, then another gentleman in the class had another quote that was even more startling to me. He said, if we took all the wealth in America and divided it equally among every citizen in America, within 5 years, the wealthy would be wealthy again and the poor would be poor again. Now, let's think about that for a minute. How the heck is that possible? Is it the wealthy people know how to handle wealth? Do they look at wealth differently? Do the poor people want to be poor? That's a debate like how many angels will dance on the head of a needle. I don't want to get into that debate. That's for people a lot wiser than me. But what jumped out at me is, if your consciousness is revolving around poverty, lack, I don't have enough, you're going to act that way. Whereas if you, let's say the wealthy people aren't afraid of not having enough, so they make better investments, they're not afraid of taking risks, etc., etc., I think they're going to end up wealthy again pretty quickly. Whereas the people that don't take risks, they're going to hoard everything, they're going to hang on to stuff, and eventually they're going to lose it all. And I was talking about this recently with you folks about taking risks in life, using the Yes Man movie with Jim Carrey as an example. So I was talking to a couple of my friends yesterday. We were out playing mini golf and having a good time. And I said to them, I said, the universe, life, whatever you want to call it, I don't like to use the word God a lot because that's got a lot of weird connotations for people. Even Eric Butterworth talks about that in the book. He calls it the allness, which I like better than God. But life wants to move us. We're on the proverbial chessboard in life, and I truly believe that. We have the illusion we're making the moves, but we're really being moved. And the universe and life has a wonderful way of sending us emails. And I've said this for years, it's either a feather, a pebble, or a rock, and those rocks get bigger. Well, let's say the universe has something wonderful in store for us, which I believe it does for all of us, depending on our perception, and we get an invite to something, and right away, instead of saying yes man or yes woman, we say no to it, no to it, no to it. And eventually those feathers will turn into pebbles. They start to become an irritation, as I'm sure I irritate a lot of people in life with my ideas and encouragement in that. And then eventually it turns into a rock, and the rock can be really brutal, especially when we feel emotionally crushed. I've worked a lot over the years with marriages. I've come to a lot of my opinions and ideas in that through a traditional therapy practice, along with studying spirituality since I was in my late teens, because I was curious. I had a curious soul. One area I see this in is in relationships a lot, that the relationship is starting to go south, and it doesn't get discussed, it doesn't get looked at. Now, it's going back to the people that live in poverty. They live in fear of not having enough, and guess what? They don't have enough. Well, the couple, instead of being willing to say, is our relationship, is it in trouble? Could it need work? Can we do better with one another? They choose to ignore that, and the problems get bigger. There may be an affair, an addiction pops up, an eating disorder, etc., spending problems. I've encountered that a lot. They're filling that void, trying to cover it up with something external instead of something internal. And if you think about it, in a relationship, there's good times and there's bad times. There's times when, it doesn't have to be a couple. It can be friendships, could be coworkers. We're afraid to look at what's going on and challenge that, look in the face of whatever outcome can be there. We keep our head under the pillow, and eventually the rocks start landing on our bodies. So I would like to ask people to start taking risks like the wealthy do. That's how the wealthy end up wealthy again, based on that study, I believe. They're not sitting from a place of lack. Oh my God, it is not going to be enough. I've got to hold on to everything. And eventually you run out of it. For instance, look at how Warren Buffett is an example. Here's a guy, lives in the Midwest, in a little town, a little house, but he's not afraid to take risks in the economy. And I'm not just talking about money here, folks. I'm talking about money is the least of where I want to go with this. Creating the life that we want to live. And whether it's investing in a new training, changing jobs, changing careers, maybe it's changing locations. Living in the Midwest, we can get some pretty brutal winters. And you know how many times I hear during the winter, I hate winter. Well, then what are you doing here? And then when I say that to them, the story that they tell themselves about why they're stuck here begins. It's too costly, I won't know anybody, I got a job here, I'm just gonna get through this, and on and on and on it goes in that. So what I would like to encourage people to do today, start small with this. Don't go skydiving next week. Start taking minor risks. Asking somebody out that you want to ask out that you're afraid of. Maybe going to open up a book and studying something brand new that it scares you because it goes against your belief system. Accepting invitations to things that you wouldn't normally do. Recently, I talked to you about a meeting I went to with a group of gay men, and as a straight man, I was invited, and I thought, I'm going to go check this out. It was a men's group they were starting, talking about the challenges of being gay in America and that. It was very, very profound. I'm really glad I took advantage of that invitation and met some really great guys in that and learned a lot, actually. So if you could start today or tomorrow, just take a risk. I was talking to my friends at mini golf last night, and we were talking about the Yes Man movie. And my one friend that was there, he leads with a lot of resistance. That's tied into our primitive brain, the part of us that's survival mode and that. But guess what? There are no more dinosaurs or lions and tigers and bears that are going to eat us. But if we're living from that part of our brain, we won't take a lot of risk. We lead with a lot of resistance. We don't want to make changes. And then nothing changes. And guess what? What I've seen with people my age, friends and clients and that, and even before my age, they're waiting to die. The spark is gone. My brother and I always talk about when we get together with people, the majority of the time they want to go into the good old days. Well, that's in the past, guys. What are we creating today? What memories, what ideas, what new stimulation are we bringing into our lives? I would love to talk to people, like I'm sure you would, about what's going on, new concepts, new books, new theologies, new inventions, etc., etc. But we're so often, we lead with the resistance because we have an identity in our heads of who we think we are. And it's not true. I was raised as a twin, and there was just the two of us. Tim and I were pretty wild when we were younger growing up. And we were. I'll admit that fully. We've turned that need for exploring and stimulation and fun times into something a lot different over the years. We're still wild and crazy, but we're not doing the crazy stuff we did as teenagers or in our early 20s. We both got sober. We've been clean and sober without a relapse for over 30 years between the two of us, each of us. We got like 64 years in. But we tried it, and we found it was a dead end, like a lot of people do with addictions. So that crazy side of us is still in there. Look at what I'm sitting here doing today, holding a camera, doing a YouTube video, which if you'd have told me when I was 30, as my prophet, Tom, I see when you're 66 years old, you and Eli are going to be sitting there talking into a camera. I never saw this coming. So when the gentleman that approached me to do this, to teach some of the wisdom that I've gained over the years, guess what I said? Yes. Well, first thought I had was, that's interesting. See, when people come to me or you and they invite us to things or suggest things to us, first off, let's not lead with defensiveness, okay? Because that gets us nowhere. The game ends there. But I look at it as life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is talking through this person using their mouth to move me to a different square on my chessboard. I do a Kabbalah class, and I created on a chessboard all the squares. I put 34 life events that happened to me from my late teens to my early 60s. Good things, bad things, neutral things. And as I looked at it, I could see how this got me to that square and that got me to this square. Whereas in the end, the last square was, I'm teaching this seminar today. If you want to feel more alive, more excitement, more stimulation in your life, don't be like the impoverished people that are hoarding everything. Be like the wealthy people that aren't afraid to take risks and accept new challenges and take some opportunities that most people wouldn't normally take. That's why when I heard that comment at class the other day about in 5 years the poor would be poor again and the wealthy would be wealthy again, I believe that. You see it with people with the lottery. We've got some proof there. And then the more I've reflected on it, I thought, okay, let's add this to just life in general. How many people are living with their beliefs of, I can't, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, it won't work, it'll fail. Guys, there's been many, many things that I've tried over the years, and I won't get into boring you with a lot of things I've learned, the different techniques, modalities that I tried, and it just didn't work out. But usually there was something else that came from that. Okay, this didn't work, but it got me into something else. Like when I was taking this practical metaphysics class, and one of the people at Unity Church said to me, well, I was surprised you were going to take that. They don't know me well, I guess. And I said, well, you know what? I'm never going to pretend like I've got all the answers and I know it all. I'm always looking for new insights, new awarenesses, new ways of helping people to grow, and myself. That's why I like the idea of helping people raise their consciousness level. As I move on with this, I'm going to be teaching you some things to strengthen your creative sense, your right brain. Because if we live in left brain land all the time, we're going to see the logic, the limitations to it all. You look at children, before we muck them up, train them, program them, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, they are magical. That guy Jesus talked about, to get into the kingdom, you have to become like a child. And I don't think he was talking about sitting around with a teddy bear hugging on it or sucking our thumbs. Start to see the world like children do. How is that possible? To me, it's our right brain, our creative self, our mystical self. It's also tied into our feminine, whether you're male or female. But tapping into the right brain to see the potential to be creative. And we all know, many of the inventions that we've enjoyed in life, including the lighting for this video. Thomas Edison had many, many, many failed attempts to get that light bulb lit before it was finally lit. Don't freak out if it doesn't work out. Look around and say, okay, it wasn't this, but what has this led me to? What awareness, what opening, what door could fly open? But so often we're afraid to walk through it. So I want to leave you with a thought. Besides starting to take risks today or tomorrow, little risks. One of my favorite authors, David Data, he's got a wonderful book called The Way of the Superior Man that I wish every gender would have read when we were 18. And he said, go to your edge constantly to feel alive, but don't fall off of it, because when we do something new, we've got to be able to integrate it. If you're just white knuckling the experience, holding your breath, freaking out, you'll get through it, white knuckling it, but you won't benefit from it. So go to your edge and push in a little bit, and then come back, let it integrate, download it, so to speak, and then go out there again and try another edge and another edge. I've got this thing in my office that I use. It's like a circle for comfort zone stuff, and I say every day, touch another part of this circle in your life. You know, say hi to somebody you wouldn't normally say hi to. Do something you wouldn't normally do, like maybe pulling over and helping somebody with a flat tire, or helping somebody with their groceries if they're struggling. Just go to your edge and find out what I have found out. The only limitations that we have are what we put on ourselves in life. There are none. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. Yeah, now, I can't run a marathon because my body says no, but to be honest, I haven't tried to run a marathon, so I probably shouldn't even say that. I haven't been motivated enough to do the training to run a marathon at the age of 66. But there are other marathons I have run, not running marathons, where I've tried different things, just like this YouTube channel that we're producing. This is something totally new to me, but I'm giving it a shot, hopefully getting it out to you guys that are living in your comfort zones a little bit too much. You know, life is never boring. It can't be boring. The technology we have today, when I was younger, I'd have to go to the library to look up stuff. Now on my computer, I just hit Mr. Google, and within seconds, the information is, you know, right there in front of me. I don't have to leave my condo anymore. So starting today, make a commitment, one little edge at a time. Push yourself a little bit. Don't go over the edge. Like I said earlier, no skydiving yet. That's a 10, let's say. Let's do the 1s and 2s and 3s of things that you normally want to do, things you want to taste, people you wouldn't normally talk to, studying things you wouldn't normally study. There's a website called Gaia. I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of really great documentaries, teachers on there, and that you can subscribe to it for, I think it's $10 a month. When I was listening to this gentleman, he had an English accent, so I think he was from Britain, and his documentary was talking about Jesus, and then he went into the Hindus, the Buddhists. There was somebody in Ireland, he was talking about somebody in Egypt, Osiris, I know that for sure. And what he was saying was, they all had virgin births, the myth behind these people. What was interesting that I found that he said was, people that are fundamental in their beliefs and whatever they believe in, they would not be open to challenging their beliefs on, what does that mean that they all had virgin births? It wasn't just Jesus, they all had them. So what's behind that? So try to stay open-minded, even with what you look into and study. And again, this channel is for people like Neil, who's waking up, trying to wake up, but needs a guide to do that. And guys, I can be a good guide. I've been blessed with a lot of great teachers and a spirit of adventure. I get bored easy. That's my gift and my curse. And that's led me into many nooks and crannies and lies, like sitting here holding this camera today, that I would not have normally done. All right, and I'll talk to you real soon.